welcome back to the channel. I am yours truly, and today we're going to look at the Washington Huskies and give their schedule prediction for 2023. Now, to give a quick recap, in 2022, Washington was a breakout team from the Pac-12. I don't care what people said, they were like the breakout team nobody saw coming. They didn't quite have the success like TCU did last year of being unexpected success, but they still won 11 games, including a bowl win over Texas. Their two losses came to UCLA and to Arizona State, which was an embarrassing loss for Washington, seeing how well Arizona State did last year. They returned Michael Penix along with a ton of talent on the offense. So I expect Washington to be a contender in the Pac-12 this year. So anyways, let's look at the Vegas odds for 2023 for Washington. As we take a look at the numbers for Washington set by the Vegas sportsbooks, I like to look at the Vegas sportsbook numbers because this is how the betting public feels. Meaning these people are willing to put their money where their mouth is and have confidence in what they're going to say. So the over-under win total for Washington this year is at 9.5. In simple terms, it's impossible to win 9.5 games. So what it means is that if you feel confident that Washington will go 10-2 or better, you bet the over. If you feel confident that Washington will go 9-3 or worse, you bet the under. Pretty easy stuff there. Now for the national title odds, Washington is at plus 4,000, which would equal to tied for 14th best odds with Oregon. Tennessee has better odds and Texas A&M has worse odds. So they're right in between those two teams. For the Pac-12 title, let me clarify before I get to the Pac-12 odds. What 4,000 plus 4,000 means is you bet 100 down, and if Washington wins the national title, you win $4,000 on your $100 bet. Now, for the Pac-12, Washington is at plus 320. So, like I said, you put 100 down, and Washington wins the big Pac-12, you win $320. And those odds are third best in the conference, only to USC and Oregon. So, anyways, let's look at Washington's schedule for 2023. As we take a look at Washington's schedule for 2023, one of the things I do notice is that their bye week comes at a great time for them. It's right before a big game with Oregon. So, even though it's a bit early for Washington, it comes at a good time. It's right before a big game for Washington. And the overall strength of the schedule, I think, is pretty balanced. It's not entirely front-loaded or back-loaded. You know what I mean. Anyways, let's pick some winners and losers out of this schedule. The first game on Washington's schedule is a home game with Boise State. Now, if this was a matchup 10, 15 years ago, this would be a top 10 matchup on the opening week, and Boise State has a well-respected reputation as one of the best Group of Five schools in recent history, and Boise State's had a reputation of beating teams on the road against Power 5 competition. Unfortunately, I don't see Boise State getting lucky and beating Washington, and I think Washington will beat Boise State, so give me Washington a win over Boise State. And then the next game after that is a home game with Tulsa. And Tulsa last year, they were just a dumpster fire. They fired their coach. So it's going to be a first-year head coach going on the road to play Washington. This probably won't be like a 50, 60-point blowout, but it's going to be in that range. It's going to be like maybe 40-point win, somewhere in there. Easy win for Washington. The next game on Washington's schedule is a road trip to Michigan State. Last year, this game was played at home for Washington, and Washington exposed Michigan State last year. pretty much beating them to a pulp. The scoreboard didn't indicate how that game went, because Washington was just up big early, and then Michigan State tried to come back, but they fell short. Yeah, nothing has impressed me about Michigan State this year. I could be proven wrong, or I could just be a total idiot. But I think Michigan State's going to be the same team, maybe just a touch better this year than they were last year. So I think Washington gets the win on the road at Michigan State. And the next game after that is a home game against Cal to open up their Pac 12 conference play. And Cal was one of the biggest disappointing teams in the Pac 12 last year. Don't get me wrong, there was a lot of good teams in the Pac 12 last year, but Cal could at least made a bowl game. I know the talent isn't there, maybe it's coaching, I don't know. But to tell you how bad this Cal team was, Colorado only win came against Cal last year, and Cal went 5-7. So all they had to do was beat Colorado, and they would have made a bowl game. But they didn't, and I think therefore Washington gets the win at home against Cal. The next game on Washington's schedule is a road trip to Arizona. Now, I think this is a trap game for Washington, because this is right before a bye week, and the next game after that is Oregon. So they could be looking ahead to Oregon and not realizing that they have to play Arizona. Arizona kept it close with them last year. Unfortunately for Arizona, they lost. This year, this is a home game for Arizona. Last year was a road game for them. I think this year, Washington's still going to get the win over Arizona, but I expect it to be closer than most experts is probably going to predict it to be. So this is going to be like a 2-touchdown, maybe a 1-touchdown win for Washington. And then, like I mentioned a second ago, they have a bye week, and then after the bye week is Oregon. Now, Oregon's going to return a lot of talent like Washington will. Last year, this was a great game between these two teams at Autzen Stadium in Oregon. This year, this is a home game for Washington. I think last year Washington got away with a little bit of a coaching mistake by Oregon. I mean, don't get me wrong, they took advantage of it and won the game. I think this year, even though this is going to be a home game for Washington, this is like a 50-50 game for me. I could flip a quarter and I wouldn't be mad about the result. Unfortunately, I had to pick a winner or loser, and I think Washington is going to lose this game, their first loss of the season. The next game for Washington is a home game against Arizona State. Last year, Washington played Arizona State on the road and got embarrassed by Arizona State. They ended up losing to Arizona State by a touchdown. It still was inexcusable. I think this year Washington will get payback and beat Arizona State at home. And then the next game after that is a road trip to Stanford. I think Stanford this year is going to be either the worst or the second worst team in the Pac-12 this year. They've just been a mess in the Pac-12 for a couple of years now, and they finally got rid of David Shaw, which I didn't want to see that happen, because David Shaw, he's like a great coach to play for, but if you're not getting wins, then what are you doing? So I think Washington will be able to easily win over Stanford on the road. Now, this 4-game stretch right here for Washington, I think they're going to lose at least one game. The first game on this stretch is a road game against USC. I think this is going to be a great game. It's probably going to be like a shootout type of game where it's going to be in the 40s. That's why I'm thinking with this game. And although I think Washington will probably be a underdog against USC when the betting lines come out against this for this game. I think Washington. I'm gonna make a bold statement. I'm gonna say Washington pulls off an upset and beats USC at home. So give Washington a win against USC. And then the next game after that is a game with Utah. Now, Utah is probably the most physical team in the Pac 12. This is the defending champ of the Pac 12. And I think this brand of football is going to slow down Washington on offense. And, well, their defense is going to get pounded into submission by this Utah offense. This is going to be a type of game that I think Washington should win, but they're going to trip on their own feet and lose. So I think Utah will beat Washington. Maybe it's because they should win it, but they basically get caught up after beating USC the week before. I mean, you can make your own judgment, but I think Washington loses this game against Utah at home. The next game for Washington is a road game against Oregon State. This game last year came down to a touchdown at home for Washington. And Oregon State last year was one of the biggest dark horses in the Pac-12 last year. They ended up winning 10 games after their bowl win, so they were 9-3 in the regular season. So. And I think Oregon State this year is going to be just as good, if not a little bit better than last year. I think they're probably going to be at that 9-3 mark again, but they're going to be probably more competitive than they were last year. However, I do think Washington pulls out a slight victory, like by a field goal, maybe by another touchdown on the road against Oregon State. So give the win to Washington in this game. And then the last game of the season is a home game for Washington against their rival Washington State. And last year, Washington beat Washington State on the road. I don't expect anything different as far as a different result or anything like that. So I think Washington wins the Apple Cup over Washington State to end their regular season. So that's going to wrap up the 2023 schedule prediction for Washington. As you see, I'm predicting they're going to go 10-2 for the season with losses to Oregon and Utah. I think so with this schedule, this would have 2 Pac-12 losses, and depending on how things shake up or go in the Pac-12 this year, this might be good enough to make a Pac-12 title game appearance. Now, the tricky part about this is not only predicting the record, but where their losses are going to come from. Like I mentioned before, the last 4 game stretch is the most difficult for them, just because where it is and locations. They could lose any 3 of those: USC, Utah, or Oregon State. Any 3 of those. I just had to pick one, and I just felt that Utah would probably be the best option, other than maybe USC being the best option for a loss. But part of my job is also trying to figure out where the upsets are going to happen, because if all the favorite teams win every week, then there'd be no point in watching football. You know what I'm saying. So I think the ceiling for Washington is 11-1. I don't think they're going to go 12-0. I just don't see that happening. They're going to lose at least one game at best. The worst case scenario for Washington is they go 8-4. I mean, not only you lose those 2 games, but you definitely can lose to USC. You definitely can lose to Oregon State. Those are just a couple of extra losses. You may even lose to Arizona if Stars and Planets line just right. So, anyways, if you enjoyed the content, enjoy my commentary, my ramblings, like and comment, subscribe to the channel. I try to do is give my comments and opinions very brief, so you kind of figure out why I'm picking this team to go this way. You know what I'm trying to say. I try to keep it brief to give my opinions, but I don't want to give it an opinion that's so long that a 15-minute video turns into like a 45-minute video breaking down each and everything that this team lost and gained, and you know it'd be way too long. But yeah, if you enjoy the content, enjoy my ramblings, you find me entertaining, I really don't, or you find me as a jackass, I don't really care. You can go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. I try to do videos on the channel. Liking, comment, subscribing goes a long way for me. I'm basically doing this for free. So, the best thing that can happen for me is, liking, comment, subscribing to be able to grow the channel and be able to start making this a hobby of mine. So, anyways, enough of me rambling on. Until next time, thank you for watching.